What you are looking at is the surprise arrival of Michael Chertoff. David Douglas was called by a couple of concerned Portlanders about the possibility of Chertoff being in the high school yesterday. They denied any knowledge of either the exercise or his appearance. Michael Chertoff is currently overseeing the Topoff 4 operation in Guam, Phoenix, and Portland, Oregon. Oh, I see the Secret Service guys parked right next to my car. Now that I recognize them on my zoom in, that's cool. Hopefully I don't have any dirty cigarette butts laying around. All right, here we see Michael Chertoff and the governor of the state of Oregon, who spoke about contingency plans just the other day. And there's Mayor Potter to the right. With General Reese. And a few other members of the military, possibly Homeland Security officials in Army military garb.
They're down on the floor. From Topoff to explain to us what's going on.
Oh, okay.
It's got like
David Douglas, yeah. The gym, you can see I'm live in the gym. I can say here in the gym.
like just before Chertoff, we'll talk about the
Okay. Great.
and then Chertoff will speak.
I'll call you back. I got 4 minutes, don't I? I will call you back.
Oh yeah, next July, if everything works out. Yeah. Actually, no, I just gave her a break. It's a surprise. It took me about 6 months to save up for the box that I thought was appropriate.
Well, when you're young, it's always like a surprise. When you're older.
In this rapid screening point, this is the facility where they bring people who were basically exposed to that toxic radiation when that Lockheed bomb went off on the Steel Bridge. A crowd in the middle of the zone making its way around the room includes Homeland Security Secretary Chertoff, Premier Tom Potter, the state's top general.
What's your name and position just for the
Randy Hutchinson. I'm the principal of David Douglas High School.
How long has David Douglas been scheduled to be a part of this exercise?
Since the mid part of August.
Have they been helping out with the finances at all?
No.
So most of that is actually being...
Yeah. Anybody
Yeah,
wants
most
to
of it's
interview
all
this
vol-
guy?
most of
can
it's
come
volunteer.
Over here. How about that?
Did you officially request to be a part of it, or was something that they invited to you?
We were invited to participate.
So your name, sorry.
Randy Hutchinson. I'm the principal of David Douglas High School.
Okay, and have you? What's it been like trying to organise around this?
From our perspective, it's been fairly normal procedures for us. We've had an opportunity to participate in this. We were asked about in March and then confirmed in August that we would be the site. And from that point forward, we participated with Jim Spitzer, who is the organizer of the event, and it's been a very smooth transition for us.
And how many of your kids are being enrolled in this?
Well, we have 3,100 kids enrolled at David Douglas High School. We're the largest high school in the state, and today, participating in this activity, there'll be over 1,100 kids.
And what are they doing? What kind of things are they doing?
The vast majority of the kids are participating as victims, and then we also have what we call our Health Sciences Career Pathway program here at David Douglas, and those kids have chosen health careers as a avocation after school. And so they're participating and helping triage people as they go through the system.
And what have they said to you about? Hey, I'm getting hugged. What have they said to you about the? Have they enjoyed it? Is it interesting? What have they said to you?
Well, quite frankly, we've kept them. The whole idea behind the activity is to not provide a whole lot of information, so that the spontaneity of the event really tries to mimic a disaster. So if there's too much planning that goes into it, then it's canned. And so we've limited them to what just the knowledge of their participation. We told parents what we were going to be doing today, gave them the option to take their kids out of it if they didn't want them to participate. And then truly, as the kids knew it was coming, but they weren't sure what the disaster drill was about. And until this morning, when they got in line to have their to come into the gymnasium, they were given a T-shirt and a script and said, "This is what's happened to you. Play this out as you go through all the stages." So very little.
What have they talked to you about what it's like?
You know, I haven't had a chance to yet. So this morning we've been here since about 5 and getting ready to make sure our end of it was sequenced and that there weren't any breakdowns in that. So I haven't had a chance to debrief with any of my administrators to see how the kids are responding. Yeah, they're excited to get a free T-shirt out of the deal and maybe get a chance to have their face on.
Have there been concerns from parents about the drill?
No, not really. I haven't had any phone calls at all related to this event, and quite frankly, we've worked very, very cooperatively with our variety of the systems of fire, police, and medical in our community, and we have looked at this as an opportunity to give back to our community, because if in the event of a disaster were to happen, because of the size of our facility and the ability for us to feed and house and provide drinking water and shelter, we would be the community resource. And so we look at this as an opportunity to have a cooperative agreement with our community and a way to pay back our community for being so supportive of the David Douglas schools.
If you want to be over there, I'll be over there. There we go.
Okay, you're the guy that's going to start. All right.
All right,
We ready?
ready.
Good. Good morning, everybody. I'm Tom Potter, the Mayor of Portland. We have some folks here to talk about Topoff 4 exercise, and that we have representatives both the state, federal, and local. So you'll have an opportunity to hear from different points of view. But I can tell you from my point of view as the Mayor of Portland that this has been an invaluable exercise. It's invaluable because we've learned where we need to improve. We also learned what we did well. And so it's much better to learn these things in an exercise than in real life. So we're going to be applying the things that we've learned, improving those skills that we thought we did well to make them better, and ensure that the community is properly protected when there's a major disaster. So I really want to extend my thanks to the federal government, to the governor, and also to Chair Ted Wheeler for the work that we did together and the communications that really made this an interesting event. I can tell you for the first 2 hours of this event, Tuesday morning, I had a hard time convincing myself that this was just an exercise. It felt real, and as you know, I'm a former police chief, and I've been in critical incidents, and this felt like a critical incident. So it was very realistic, and I really appreciated that. And I think that it will help us grow as a community and understand how these events change a community and how we need to make sure that the citizens are kept informed with accurate and honest information. So with that, I'll turn it over to our Governor of Oregon, Governor Ted Kulongoski.
Thank you, Tom. I think Tom said most about the congratulations to the city, the mayor, Chairman Wheeler, and the county commission. I don't know if you realize this, but there's about 3 different emergency operational centers around, and the one you haven't seen is the one that's down in Salem. We've had an exercise going on I'm going to talk to you about in a moment that's a little bit different, and I understand this is the first time that it's been ever done in a top-off exercise, and that is from the state's perspective, and the Adjutant General of the Oregon National Guard, who is the head of our Homeland Security, General Fred Reese, is here, and he was in the command center with the Office of Emergency Management, Ken Murphy, and I had a room set with all of my directors of my state agencies. Our perspective of this is the most important thing in the beginning was the public safety issue, is how do we communicate to the citizens that it's just normal to be afraid, and they were afraid, and our responsibility is to assure them that we understand their concerns and that we're doing everything we can to protect them, to apprehend the people who did this, and try to convey to them that there is an order and there is a plan to help them. The second issue was the initial response, which was critically important to all of us, and I want to thank the city police and fire department, and as the mayor knows better than I do, and I know it from my own private practice as an attorney, it is not always an easy relationship between police and fire. There's some competition, but the coordination and the way that these people work together under a unified command was commendable, and I'm very, very appreciative of everything they've done. The third thing, which is new, is this recovery plan. And one of the things that it became aware to me and to the state government is that there would be a time when there would be a day after. In other words, we would apprehend the people, we would do the initial cleanup that we needed, but there may be weeks and months in which people will need housing, they will need medical care, and what we had never done in the state is actually get every state agency in. First of all, tell us what assets you have and what you bring to this, and then develop a plan of how you could actually work. And as an example, what we now know, I always knew the National Guard had the capacity to actually build a city with tents, with cooking, with showers, with medical care. I did not know until I got them all in the room that the Department of Corrections for the state does the same thing. And the Department of Forestry, which shouldn't be a surprise to anyone when there's a forest fire, they have that capacity. So when we look at it, and I get the Office of Community Development and Housing together, they were actually identifying sites where we would be able to place people temporarily until they could get back into their homes and they'd have their homes cleaned up. So the recovery plan piece of this, I think, is new. It's something that the state had never done, and I think it's been a great exercise. We've learned a lot. There's some things we didn't do well, and there are a lot of things we did well, but I want to thank the mayor and everyone for their participation. I'd like to now introduce the Chief Federal Law Enforcement Officer in the state, and that is the U.S. Attorney Karen Immigrant.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, everybody. I'm here on behalf of the federal law enforcement component of this exercise. I had the opportunity to spend much of the past 2 days at the Joint Operations Center, which consisted not just of federal law enforcement, but state, local, and federal all working together. And this was a terrific exercise for us to really test our capacity to share information and do it very quickly and ultimately hopefully catch the bad guys. That's our job. And what I saw was a terrific effort on behalf of many of the agencies represented here, Portland Police Bureau, the sheriffs, FBI, ICE, all the Department of Justice, federal agencies, as well as Oregon State Police and others. And they did, the room was abuzz. There were agents working multiple shifts. And the reason that we have to do that is this is the first time to really tax our capacity. And I would say, obviously, we still have a lot of after-action work to do to figure out what went well and what didn't. But certainly this was the first time that we were able to test our system in that capacity and make sure that we could share information. Certainly it is very, very clear to me that since September 11th of 2001, we have made tremendous inroads in that regard, and we're lucky here in Oregon to have excellent communication among our state, local, and federal agencies, and of that we should all be very, very proud. With respect to, I also want to remind you that one of the things that we realized during the exercise was how important it is to have the eyes and ears of the public involved with law enforcement to report crimes as they occur. Without the tips that came in through the FBI tip line, we probably couldn't have solved some of the investigation, which was a mock investigation in this case, but that became crucial, the witness reporting about different aspects of the crime scene and the investigation. It was very fast moving. It crossed multiple jurisdictions. We had to do lots of conference calls and again testing the equipment and testing our timeliness to work over different time zones and in different jurisdictions with agencies with lots of different enforcement authority. That was really a terrific training for us and test. We also practiced harnessing the powers of the observation of the public, again with this 24-hour tip line. And I know that we are all very grateful, those of us who are involved in this, that it was only an exercise, but I have to say that after having gone through it, I believe that we are all much more prepared to face a real event, whether it's an emergency, just of a natural disaster, or a terrorist event here in Oregon in the future. Thank you so much. And it's now my pleasure to introduce General Renner from NORCOM. He is the Department of, and I may have mispronounced his name, I apologize. He is the top general for the Department of Defense, and we are very lucky to have him here as part of this exercise. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Well, as Karen mentioned, I'm the commander of U.S. Northern Command and the commander of NORAD, and I say that for a particular reason because at the same time the first responders were on the ground evaluating the scene, trying to decide how best to fashion that initial response. It's also imperative that we maintain security over our skies, and I'm proud to say that General Fred Reese and the members of the Oregon Air National Guard were on alert, ready to, and in fact did fly some missions that ensured that we maintain security in the airspace above the site itself. So this is not just a land-centric response. We had great work out of our NORAD team, both here in the Western Area Defense Sector up in Washington, as well as the 142nd Wing. I want to just say make 2 points about our participation in the exercise. First, we have a key role to ensure that as the states respond to a critical emergency, and as they see a need for extra military capacity, that we have planned for that and found a way to integrate that into the team that the State Adjutant General has put together and is there to support the objectives of the governor. We also do that hand in hand with our partners in the Department of Homeland Security. Our defense coordinating officers operate in each FEMA region. They integrate immediately with both the federal officials as well as the state officials to ensure that we anticipate the kinds of federal military response that might be required, whether it is medical, whether it is radiological assessment, whether it might be engineering, communications, and the like. Our role then is to integrate that in a way that is seamless so that the citizens of Oregon, in this case, for this part of the exercise, are taken care of in the way that they expect and deserve. The final point I'd make is that, and Karen alluded to this, the integration and coordination between the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Defense, principally U.S. Northern Command, has been superb. It is as good as it has ever been in the history of those two organizations. We continue to refine it, we continue to improve it, we continue to seek the best common picture that we can of event sites, but we have built an integrated team that the country should be proud of. With that, I'd like to let Secretary Chertoff come up and talk to you a little bit about it from the Department of Homeland Security perspective. Secretary Chertoff.
Thank you, General Lenore. Well, first of all, let me thank the governor and the mayor, the county officials for hosting us in this fourth of a series of top officials exercises known as Topoffs. The point of these exercises is to get federal, state, and local officials, civilian and military, to deal with some very challenging scenarios as a way of testing themselves, learning lessons about things that can be improved and also about what works well, and then building on that in order to improve our general level of preparedness. The preparation for this has been about 20 months in the making, and Oregon and Portland were among the communities that sought to be part of the program. They cooperated with us extensively in the preceding 20 months, and they were integrated into a scenario involving supposed radiological devices or dirty bombs that included activity not only here in Oregon, but in Arizona and in Guam, as well as at sea. And Portland actually participated in the exercise with the most intensity, with a lot of actual real world as opposed to tabletop elements to the exercise. And I appreciate the hospitality and the hard work, and I think it'll be valuable, and I'm looking forward to working with you on the after action. We have done these exercises every 2 years for the past 8 years. This is the largest. It involves 15,000 people who are playing at one level or another. Some of what is involved will not be visible to people here. Obviously, you've seen the response element, you've seen the investigative element. There was activity in Arizona, there was activity in Guam, which also involved Pacific Command. There was also, as part of the exercise, a simulated interception and search of a vessel at sea. There were intelligence elements to the game that required the analysts to analyze information and try to characterize who was responsible for the attack. And of course, we played it in Washington at the cabinet level as well as at the state and local level. So all of this is part of that single exercise. We will pull together what we call an after-action report and probably circulate an executive summary of that to the entities that have been involved, the partners at all different levels, within the next 2 to 3 months. Then there'll be a more in-depth report with some back and forth that will be presented to the partners and the players over the next 6 or 7 years. Before I take questions, I'll anticipate a question that we often get asked, which is, when do we release all this detail to the public? And if we're not going to, why don't we? I'm sure there'll come a point in time there'll be some generalized discussion with the public about the outcome of this. But I think it's also going to be apparent, as a matter of common sense to the public, that we don't necessarily want to reveal all of the weaknesses or vulnerabilities we've detected and put it on the internet, because among those who participate in reading the internet are bin Laden and all of his henchmen. And if I wanted to send him a list of targets, I'd send it directly. I wouldn't put it on the internet in order to get it there. So obviously we maintain the details, but we do share all those with the actors at the federal, state, and local level. We have had the Inspector General present as an observer, and we've had GAO, which is the investigative arm of Congress, present. So Congress will also have visibility into what worked and what didn't work as part of this process. And with that, I'll be happy to take some questions. If you have questions to others here, tell me to whom they're directed. Please try to keep them on topic. I'm sure there are all kinds of interesting topics you'd like to talk to people here about, but they don't have to do with this exercise. So go ahead.
Michael Chertoff, we've heard a lot about Topoff oil. We have talked about visual shield and the other war game exercises that are happening this exact same week. There's actually about half dozen to a dozen war game drills, including a Chinese-Russian drill taking place in the Far East. My question to you is, when are we going to be disclosed the American people as to the real threat of China and Russia, or the possible conflict with China and Russia?
Well, obviously the military ran as part of this exercise some parallel exercises relating to this scenario. There are exercises run all the time. I think if you want to talk about other exercises and geopolitics, I think that falls in the category of off topic. So I'm going to try to confine myself to the exercises that deal with this particular scenario. We do have defense actually coordinating, though, exercise activities for the Defense Department as part of this effort, which I think makes sense.
Governor Kolomowski, if I could ask you a question. It was my understanding the script called you for you to be incapacitated, and you decided you didn't want to be incapacitated. Is that accurate?
No.
Okay.
If I must tell you, and this has had a different impact than I thought, Mr. Secretary, because this is in the line of communication. One of the things that on the state level we wanted to do was to look at the Oregon succession statute about how, if during a natural or emergency or disaster that the governor became incapacitated, how do you move to get the Secretary of State, who is the next in line, into position? None of us had ever gone through this exercise, and it had never been implemented. In fact, if you look in the history of Oregon, it wasn't the last time this succession issue came up was in 1947, when I think it was Governor Earl Schnell and the President of the Senate, who at that time was the next in line, and the Secretary of State, who was third in line, went on a duck hunting trip down to Klamath Falls, and on the way back their plane iced up, and all three of them were killed in a plane crash, and no one actually knew what to do. And if you go back in history, the Speaker of the House of Representatives in Oregon became the governor. We wanted to see the statute and how it's operating, and what they did is they did come in, because what's required, the members of the three committees are the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the President, Chair of the Medical School, and the Director of the State Hospital. They all came in. They are required by the statute to actually physically examine the governor. They take a secret vote. It must be unanimous. We had the Attorney General there. Speaker Courtney was there. We went through the drill to get the office back. Once they say you're incapacitated, I have to do the same thing, which brings up the interesting question: if one of them doesn't like you and says no, and you're all there, what are you going to do? And you don't get the office back, because that's the way the statute reads. And so we wanted to see how it operated. The side effect by not communicating this, on the virtual news network, Mr. Sawyer, who has been the chief commentator, actually thought that I'd had a heart attack, and actually thought it was real life. And in fact, Tim McLean, who is the superintendent of public and the state police here, actually was trying to kill the rumor up in this police command center that the governor was in real life. And so we didn't communicate what we were doing as well as we should, and we will next time. So that's what happened.
On the issue of communication, the other day when there was a press conference for the opening exercise, you were saying you were playing a drill. And then when an unscripted question came to you, you left the stage. And today you were telling us that it's important to communicate with the public, to build their trust, to let them know that there was a plan in place. Would you have done that in real life? I mean, do you think that's at all damaged?
Well, I don't think you would. Look, I'm going to take the secretary's. You're off topic, but okay, and I'll answer to you.
Okay.
Is that I don't think you would have asked the question, because if this was a real life exercise, you would have been worried about what is in the best interest of the citizens of the state, and it was a disaster.
Can I ask a question to the Secretary of Chertoff? You talked about the fact that we're not going to give a game plan to potential enemies. So we're sharing this across agencies, but does this kind of make this a fact of life? We've been doing this drill every 2 years. Are we going to have to keep doing this drill every 2 years now in perpetuity in order to maybe keep readiness or keep people sharp?
I don't think it's going to be done in perpetuity. Congress actually mandated a series of these. I think there may be 5 in the series, if I'm not mistaken. I will tell you, because I was talking to the governor and the mayor about this, that exercising, we exercise all the time. It may not always be at this scale, because this is a rather large-scale exercise. But honestly, the best way you can turn your training and your planning into something that's really effective is to exercising. That's what the military does. The military is constantly exercising. That's what a good football team does. They're constantly scrimmaging. If you had a football team where they worked out and they read the playbook, but they never scrimmaged until they came on for the big game, that would be a pretty lousy football team. I won't identify any team in particular for this. So the lesson is, yeah, we should be doing exercising for the foreseeable future, and we should be exercising for all kinds of things: natural disasters, terrorist attacks, pandemic flus, because by exercising, we're going to be better in the real event.
If this were a real event, would you have been here earlier? I mean, I assume this is just because of the schedule, but if this had been a real event, would you have been here right away?
Well, the scenario actually involved events in Guam and Portland and in Arizona as well. So I in fact might well not have come until later because I would have been much more involved in Washington in coordinating the whole national effort. I mean, look, an exercise at the end of the day is only an exercise, and we did have other things we had to do. But I do think we played it real, and I do think at some point, one I would expect to be at the scene here and in Arizona, and maybe not immediately in Guam, but at some point in Guam.
Secretary, the reality as far as the public goes is most people do not have any kind of preparations even for 72 hours. So this is all going on, you can see the holes in the systems of people being able to take care of other people. Is there any plan to try and do anything about that issue? In other words, to try and either emphasize or to do some kind of incentives maybe to get people to prepare more?
Well, you know, you put your finger on one of the great challenges that we have, which is how to get people prepared. You know, we do have a website, ready.gov, which does tell people if they get on the site what kinds of preparations you need for an emergency. And they're pretty simple and pretty straightforward, and we try to make it user-friendly. But the issue is, how do you motivate people to do it? And regrettably, often what motivates people is when they've lived through a disaster and they've experienced what it's like not to be prepared, and then that gets them very motivated. The incentive is very simple. If you want to save your life and the life of your families, that is a really good incentive to get prepared. I can tell you, having lived through 9/11 in Washington and having experienced the stress that day when I was at the FBI trying to deal with the attack, and I had kids in school, and my wife was trying to get to the kids. Everybody who lived in Washington, that area, got a good, healthy dose of incentive on being prepared. What I'd like to ask the media to do, though, is to send the message out. You know, it's not necessarily a terrorist attack. It could be a natural disaster of some kind. It could be a pandemic flu. People do need to take a certain amount of responsibility. We're trying to make it easy. It's not that hard. It's not, you don't need to get all kinds of esoteric things to put in your basement. But, you know, just food, water, a radio, your medicines, having a plan for how you would meet if you were separated. You know, you could probably put it together in an hour or two. So a lot of what I am doing is taking advantage of opportunities like this to drive the message through to people. Let me leave it like this. My kids at school were taught when there's a fire, there's certain things you're supposed to do. We were all taught, put your seatbelts on before you get in an automobile. These are all elements of preparation. Preparation for an emergency should become part of the fabric of this country in the same way as fire drills and seatbelts have become part of the fabric of this country. Yeah.
This question is for you or for Governor Kuligowski or Mayor Potter or all three. Are there circumstances that could arise in exercises like Topoff that would lead you or other DHS or local state officials to call on the services of Blackwater or similar contract security firms? And can you relate that to for what reason Blackwater was called after Hurricane Katrina?
Well, I can't say in this exercise we worried about private security firms. Obviously, if you go around day by day, many private institutions do hire private security firms. So, I mean, I guess they exist as a fact of life. In general, we would anticipate the National Guard and the military and of course local police, providing security in any event. If private people want to hire security services to protect themselves, I mean, it's a free country, they can do it. Our planning is not built upon relying on private security services to provide security. It's built on relying on local police from other jurisdictions that would come and assist under an emergency compact, the National Guard, which is the principal security provider, and in some limited circumstances, having the Department of Defense provide additional security. I don't know if the governor or the mayor want to.
Mayor Potter, actually, I wanted to ask you a question. You said in the first 2 hours you had a hard time believing this was a drill. Can you be more specific? Did you order an evacuation? What were you being told? What was the time frame and all that?
You know, when the initial information came in, we were watching it on virtual television, and it was so realistic. And the information coming in was mixed. As you may or may not know, at an initial stage of a major incident like this, you get conflicting information. Fortunately, I believe that our police and fire did a superb job as first responders. They're the first to tell us that there was some radioactive material in that bomb. And so that put us on a different course. And so as things were unfolding, it's as if it were actually happening. And then I would glance over at the TV and watch our virtual network repeating information and rumors, just like they do in real life. And it became all very real. And I want to add a little bit to the last question asked about personnel used. All of the personnel that I requested through mutual aid or from the county or state were other police agencies, with the exception of the National Guard, which we asked for some minor assistance. They took no police action. So everything that we requested were other police agencies.
We'll take two more questions, please.
Whether or not you evacuate any part of the city, part of the drill?
No, initially, we asked people to shelter in place. That is, stay where you are. Once we got some initial assessment about the radioactive material, we recognized that there was greater harm for people to go outside and have this material come down on top of them. So we asked them to shelter in place. That means stay where you're at. If you're at work, stay at work, at your home, or your children in school. They were much, much safer there than coming out onto the public areas where there could be the possibility of contamination.
We won't count that one. We'll go back and back, please. Yes, Peach Blouse.
Mr. Secretary, welcome to Portland. It's never like this outside.
It's always sunny, right?
And you brought 9/11, and there were a number of drills going on 9/11, a live flight hijacking drill and a plane into a building drill. And I was wondering if you could address the fact that those drills sort of presaged the actual events that happened, and what steps have you and DHS taken to make sure that these drills don't presage and sort of predict or bring on or whatever the actual live events?
I have to confess, I've never heard anybody suggest that there were any drills that presaged or brought on 9/11. I think I have a pretty firm grasp on what brought on 9/11, and I also read the 9/11 Commission report, and I'm pretty confident that it was brought on by Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and Osama bin Laden and Mohammed Atta and a bunch of other folks, none of whom consulted with or were focused on any kinds of drills. I mean, I think we drill all the time on scenarios that we believe are possible, some more likely than others, and we do it because we want to be prepared if something happens. I think it would be a form of kind of magical thinking to believe that if we drill for something, it's going to happen because we drilled for it. On that theory, we should never have a fire drill because fire drills bring on fires. So certainly this scenario, which was planned a couple years ago, and I think we've actually used RDDs previously, reflects an honest recognition that we live in a world where there could be a dirty bomb and that we better be prepared for it. But it's not, I'm quite confident that the fact of the drill is not going to bring on an attack.
Last question up front. One at a time, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we've had several drills from the state and local jurisdictions over the last few years. Is there any concern that gradually you build in this atmosphere of fear amongst people and that they will then vote for military spending instead of school spending? Is there any concern?
No, I would know there really isn't. I mean, unless you believe that by ignoring a problem you can make it go away. I mean, we could say, let's not drill. Let's pretend that there's never going to be a terrorist attack. Let's pretend that the news I saw earlier this year about bombs in London was an imaginary event, that the plot in Germany was imaginary, that the Madrid bombing was imaginary, that the London airline plot was imaginary. We'll never drill for it, and then when it happens, we won't have any clue what to do. I think the idea that drilling for events that, like it or not, reflect real threats in the real world is prudent. I think the public expects us to be prepared for these kinds of events. I think we would be derelict in our duty if we weren't. That's why the military drills against the possibility that there are wars. Proper drilling actually makes it less likely you're going to have wars or less likely you're going to have attacks because you make it a less attractive target. I have to say, I mean, if there are people out there who believe that by talking about and preparing for a bad thing, you're going to make it come about. I mean, they frankly remind me of little kids who, hide their head under the blanket and hope that if they don't look at something or they don't think about something, it's not going to happen. We have an obligation. Let me tell you, 9/11 was a real event. I lived through that event. I know the things that were not planned for and not the capabilities that were not present there. And I've spent a good deal of my life over the last 6 years trying to build and prepare for those capabilities. And we have more we need to do. But I'd be the last person to get up and say, you know what? Let's forget the whole thing. And if we pretend it doesn't exist, it's going to go away. That is not mature adult thinking.
Right, I'm sorry, that's it. Thanks very much, everybody. That's it.
It's a gray area.
Right.
Thanks very much, everybody.
No, let me finish the way. Go ahead.
I think nobody's suggesting that we shouldn't think about 9/11.
Right.
But there's a gray area. How many drills do you have? How many is too many?
And the answer is, we do, as Congress has determined, we do one every 2 years at a large scale. And then we do intermediate kinds of tabletop exercises from time to time. And, I think that's about the right amount. I think each time we've done one of these exercises, we've gotten better at it. I think the people who participated in it have learned a lot about what works and what doesn't work in their own systems. And so I think one of the acid tests of how people feel about it is that we have a lot of communities that seek to participate, and I think they participate because it adds value.
Thank you.
Well,